A woman died in 2023, leaving behind a metal box locked with 3 padlocks. On the lid, an inscription carved by hand, "Do not open before 2065. She made her daughter swear that no one would touch that box for 100 years. But there was a problem. The woman always said that box was sealed in 1965, except her grandson, let's call him David, found a photo dated 1974, where the same box appears open on his grandmother's kitchen table. She lied for almost 60 years. And when David finally opened that time capsule, against all orders, against his mother's oath, he discovered something that changed everything he knew about his own family. It wasn't nostalgia. It wasn't love letters. It wasn't innocent memories from a simpler time. It was something much darker, something that explains why his grandmother never talked about the past, why she destroyed every photo from before 1975, why she completely erased 2 entire decades of her own history, and why, in her final days in that hospital bed, she kept repeating just one phrase: "They can't know. Never let them know." What you're about to hear isn't fiction. It's not speculation. This is a real story, documented, disturbing. Every detail was confirmed by documents that were inside that box, documents that should never have seen the light of day, documents that reveal a secret so dangerous it needed to be buried for generations. This is the story of Margaret Louise Brennan, or rather, of the woman who was once Margaret Louise Brennan, before she disappeared, before she became someone else, before she built an entire life on top of a lie. Brace yourself, because some truths weren't meant to be discovered. The forbidden box. The box had always been there. David remembers seeing it since he was a kid, in the corner of his grandmother's closet, covered by old blankets, empty shoeboxes, clothes nobody wore anymore. A rusted metal box locked with 3 heavy-duty padlocks. Heavy, silent, forbidden. He'd see it when he visited her house, when he played hide-and-seek and opened the wrong closet, and every time he asked about that box, his grandmother gave him the same look. That look that said more than 1,000 words. That look that meant, "Don't ask, never ask, this isn't for you." And he obeyed. Because children obey. And because Grandmother Dorothy was sweet, kind, loving. But she had a quiet authority that nobody challenged. When she died in May 2023, at age 85 or 87, depending on which birth certificate you believe, David's mother, Sarah, inherited the house. And with the house came the box. Sarah brought it to her own basement, placed it in a corner, covered it with an old sheet, and there the box stayed for 8 months, untouched, respected, feared, because an oath is an oath. And Sarah had promised her mother in their last lucid conversation that the box wouldn't be opened until 2065, 100 years after the day it was supposedly sealed. 100 years of silence, 100 years of secrecy, but David couldn't stop thinking about it. 26 years old, journalism degree, working as a freelance reporter, he had an instinct for mysteries, and that box was the biggest mystery of his life. Why 100 years? Who guards something for 100 years? What secret is so dangerous, so devastating, that it needs to cross entire generations before being revealed? And more importantly, what was his grandmother hiding? It was in January 2024 that David found the photo, rummaging through boxes of old albums in his mother's attic, searching for images of his grandmother when she was young, because she had destroyed almost all of them, burned them, torn them up, systematically erased any visual evidence of who she was before 1975. And then, inside an album with no cover, between loose pages and faded Polaroids, he saw it, a photo, taken in the kitchen of his grandmother's old house, date stamped on the back in faded red ink, July 17th, 1974. And in the photo, clearly visible on the wooden table, next to a coffee cup and an ashtray with a lit cigarette, was the box, the same metal box, open, with papers scattered around it, and his grandmother, younger, sitting there looking at the papers with an expression David had never seen on her face. Fear. Pure fear. Not 1965. His grandmother lied about when she sealed that box, lied for almost 50 years, and if she lied about that, about something so specific, so intentional, what else did she lie about? David took a photo of the Polaroid with his phone, zoomed in, studied every detail. The box was definitely open, the papers were visible, and in the corner of the photo, almost out of frame, he could see part of a document. A header, two legible words, Police Department. Police Department. There were police documents in that box. For 3 weeks, David became obsessed. He researched his grandmother online, tried to find public records, certificates, anything, but there was nothing before 1975. Dorothy Klein simply didn't exist before that year, as if she'd been born at age 37. He knew he needed to open the box, but he also knew that meant breaking his mother's promise, betraying his grandmother's last wish, violating something sacred, but the truth weighed more. It always weighed more. On a Tuesday night, while his mother was away on a business trip, David went down to the basement, grabbed the box, placed it on a wooden workbench under a dim light. 3 padlocks, 1 with a number combination, 2 with key locks. He didn't have the keys, didn't know the combination, and he wasn't going to ask his mother because she'd stop him. He grabbed bolt cutters, a metal file, a small hammer, and started forcing the padlocks. The first one took 15 minutes. Old metal, rusted, gave way easier than expected. The second took 20 minutes, more resistant. Sweat dripped down his forehead. His hands trembled. His heart beat so hard he could hear his own pulse. The third padlock, the combination one, was the hardest. Took 40 minutes of trying brute force until finally the internal mechanism broke and the padlock opened with a metallic click that echoed through the silent basement. David took a deep breath, hands on the cold lid of the box. This was the moment. After this, there was no going back. The truth, whatever it was, would change everything. He opened the lid slowly. The smell of old paper, rusted metal, and mildew filled the air. And what he saw inside froze him. They weren't love letters. They weren't nostalgic photos from a lost youth. They weren't old recipes or travel mementos. They were documents. Stacks of official documents, certificates, yellowed newspaper clippings, an old ID card, letters with police department stamps, a black notebook that looked like a diary, and at the bottom of the box, underneath everything, a thick manila envelope, sealed with yellowed tape, and written by hand in shaky letters he immediately recognized as his grandmother's, a single warning. If you're reading this, it's too late to hide the truth. Forgive me. I did what I needed to do to survive. David grabbed the entire box and carried it upstairs to the kitchen table, turned on all the lights, made coffee, and started taking out each item one by one, organizing, studying, trying to piece together the puzzle of a life that never officially existed. And what he discovered over the next 4 hours changed everything. The first thing David picked up was the ID card, old from a different state, issued Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, March 12, 1959, name Margaret Louise Brennan, date of birth June 3, 1936, address 447 Maple Street, Erie, Pennsylvania. But that wasn't his grandmother's name. His grandmother was named Dorothy Ann Klein, had always been named Dorothy Ann Klein, since he was born, since his mother was born, since anyone alive had known her. David held the ID up to the light. The photo was her, no doubt about it. Same, light blue eyes, same oval face shape, same dimple on the chin, but 20, maybe 25 years younger. Dark hair pulled back in a bun, no wrinkles, but definitely her. Dorothy Cline had another identity, another name, another date of birth, another life. He grabbed the next document, a birth certificate. Margaret Louise Brennan, born June 3, 1936, at Mercy Hospital, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Parents, Robert Brennan and Louise Brennan, née Hughes. Father's occupation, factory worker. Mother, homemaker. But the family's official story was completely different. His grandmother always said she was born August 14, 1938 in Cleveland, Ohio. Parents, William and Anna Cline. She'd always been Cline, always been from Ohio, always been 1938. 2 years difference, different state, different city, different parents, completely different name. Who the hell was Dorothy Cline? Or rather, who the hell was Margaret Brennan? David kept digging, found another certificate. This one for marriage. Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Erie County, date June 22, 1957, bride, Margaret Louise Brennan, age 21, groom, Thomas James Brennan, age 23, ceremony location, St. Paul Catholic Church, Erie, PA, officiant, Father Michael O'Brien. She'd been married. His grandmother had been married before grandfather Robert, and never told anyone. The family's official story had always been clear. Dorothy met Robert Cline in 1959 at a dance in Cleveland. They married in 1960, first and only time for both. A blessed marriage that lasted 48 years until his death in 2008. But it was a lie. All of it was a lie. David grabbed his phone and started searching. Thomas James Brennan, Erie, Pennsylvania, 1957. Several results came up. Genealogical records, census archives, and then a link to the digital archive of the Erie Times News. He clicked. A news story from March 15, 1963. Local man dies in factory accident. Thomas James Brennan, 28, killed in machinery malfunction. At Erie Steel Works, the article was short, straightforward. Thomas Brennan, factory worker, died on the morning of March 14, 1963, due to injuries caused by an industrial press malfunction. Instant death. Survived by wife, Margaret Brennan. Funeral to be held at St. Paul Catholic Church. David read and reread it. His grandmother's first husband died. Industrial accident, 1963. 6 years after the wedding, he went back to the box and grabbed the original newspaper clipping. It was there, the same story, yellowed by time, carefully folded, but there was something the digital version didn't show. In the corner of the clipping, written by hand with faded blue pen, in handwriting David recognized as his grandmother's. 3 words underlined twice. It wasn't an accident. David felt a chill run up his spine. It wasn't an accident. She wrote that. His own grandmother. She didn't believe her husband's death was accidental. He continued pulling things from the box. More documents. A life insurance policy. Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, issued January 1961. Insured, Thomas James Brennan. Beneficiary, Margaret Louise Brennan, wife. Amount $100,000, $100,000 in 1963. David did a quick calculation. That would be almost $1 million today. His grandmother received a fortune when her husband died. Next document, proof of payment from the insurance company. Dated May 2, 1963. Amount of $100,000 deposited into bank account in the name of Margaret Louise Brennan at First National Bank of Erie. And after that, nothing. Margaret Louise Brennan disappeared from the records. Nothing more. No tax records. No address, no documents, as if she'd simply ceased to exist until 1975, when Dorothy Ann Cline appears out of nowhere in Cleveland, Ohio, married to Robert Cline since 1960, according to the official narrative. With a 12-year-old daughter, David's mother, Sarah, who was supposedly born in 1963, David stopped, did the math. Sarah was born in August 1963. 5 months after Thomas Brennan's death. Was she Thomas's daughter or Robert's? And if she was Thomas's, that meant his grandmother was pregnant when he died, which changed everything. He grabbed his phone again, searched for his mother's birth certificate, found a copy she'd kept to get a passport years ago. Mother's name, Dorothy Ann Klein. Father's name, Robert Klein. Child's date of birth, August 14th, 1963. Location, Cleveland, Ohio. But if Margaret only became Dorothy after 1963, how did the birth certificate already say Dorothy Klein? The answer was obvious. The certificate was falsified or issued later with altered information. Sarah wasn't Robert Klein's biological daughter. She was Thomas Brennan's daughter, and his grandmother had redone all the documentation to erase that, to create a new story, a new reality. David was beginning to understand. His grandmother didn't just change identities. She completely erased her previous existence and built an entirely new life with a new name, new history, new husband, new past. But why? Why would someone do that? Why would someone erase 6 years of marriage, a husband's death, an insurance, fortune, and start over with a fake identity? The answer was in the letters and in the diary. And David was about to discover a truth much darker than he imagined, the detective's letters. David found the bundle of letters tied with thin, worn string. 18 envelopes, all addressed to Mrs. Margaret Brennan, 447 Maple Street, Erie, PA. Sender, Detective Howard Mills, Erie Police Department, Criminal Investigation Division. He untied the strings slowly and organized the letters by date. The first was from April 20th, 1963. 1 month and 6 days after Thomas's death. David opened the envelope. Official letterhead, typewritten, formal. Dear Mrs. Brennan, I understand this is a difficult time for you, and I offer my condolences for your loss. However, as the investigating officer assigned to your late husband's case, I must insist that you cooperate with our ongoing investigation. There are several inconsistencies in the factory's account of the incident that require clarification. Specifically, we need to understand your whereabouts on the morning of March 14th and clarify conflicting witness statements regarding your presence at the Erie Steel Works facility that day. Please contact this office at your earliest convenience to schedule a formal interview. Respectfully, Detective Howard Mills, Investigation. There was a criminal investigation. The police didn't accept the accident as an accident, and they wanted to talk to Margaret, because witnesses had placed her at the factory the day her husband died. David opened the second letter. May 10th, 1963. Mrs. Brennan, you have not responded to my previous letter or to the 3 phone messages I left with your neighbor, Mrs. Henderson. Your refusal to cooperate is making this investigation significantly more difficult. I need to be clear. We have witness testimony placing you at the Erie Steel Works facility at approximately 8:45 a.m. on March 14th, shortly before your husband's fatal accident occurred at 9:20 a.m. Factory records show you signed in at the visitor log at 8:42 a.m. You were there, Mrs. Brennan, and we need to know why. This is not optional. Please contact this office immediately. Detective Howard Mills. She was there at the factory 40 minutes before his death. Signed the visitor log. There was documentary proof. David felt his stomach tighten. This wasn't about a questionable accident anymore. This was about his grandmother being investigated as a possible suspect. Third letter, May 28th, 1963. The tone changed completely. Mrs. Brennan, a subpoena has been issued requiring your testimony regarding the death of Thomas James Brennan. You are hereby ordered to appear at the Erie Police Department on June 5th, 1963, at 10:00 a.m. for formal questioning. Failure to comply will result in a warrant for your arrest. Detective Howard Mills, subpoena. Threat of arrest. The situation escalated. And David knew what came next, because he'd already seen that Margaret disappeared right after this. Fourth letter, June 15th, 1963. Mrs. Brennan, you failed to appear for your scheduled interview on June 5th. A warrant for your arrest has been issued. Officers visited your residence at 447 Maple Street and found the property abandoned. Neighbors report you have not been seen since late May. Mrs. Brennan, fleeing an investigation is a crime. I urge you to turn yourself in immediately. Running only makes you look guilty. Detective Howard Mills. She ran before the mandatory interview, abandoned the house, disappeared completely, and an arrest warrant was issued. The following letters showed the progression of the search. July 1963. Investigators checked relatives in Pittsburgh. Nothing. August 1963. Banks reported that the account with the $100,000 insurance money was emptied on May 29th, 2 days before the scheduled interview date. The money was withdrawn in cash, impossible to trace. September 1963, the investigation went cold. No leads, no whereabouts. Margaret Brennan simply evaporated. And then, the last letter. October 3rd, 1963. This one was different. It wasn't typewritten. It was handwritten, personal, almost confessional. Margaret, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't even know if you're still alive. But I need to write it anyway. The case of Thomas James Brennan has been officially closed. The department ruled it an accidental death due to machinery. Malfunction, lack of physical evidence, lack of suspect testimony, lack of resources to pursue a fugitive on what is, officially, just an accident. But I know it wasn't an accident, Margaret. I know you were there. I know you had motive. We found the hospital records, the police reports from 1961 and 1962, all the times you called about domestic disturbances and then refused to press charges. I know what he did to you. Part of me understands why you did what you did. Part of me even thinks you were right to do it. But the other part of me, the part that swore an oath, knows that I should have found you, should have brought you in, should have let a jury decide. I failed, or maybe I didn't try hard enough. Maybe I let you go because I knew what verdict you'd get in 1963 for killing your husband, no matter what he did to you. Maybe I let you disappear because it was the only justice you were ever going to get. Wherever you are, I hope you're safe. I hope you built a better life, and I hope you found peace. But know this, I know what you did, and someday, somehow, the truth will come out. Howard Mills. David put down the letter, his hands shaking. The detective knew. He knew Margaret killed Thomas. He had motive, documented domestic abuse. He had opportunity. She was at the factory. And he had her disappearance as implicit confession of guilt. But he let the case die, intentionally, because he knew that in 1963, a woman who killed her abusive husband didn't get justice. She got life in prison, or worse. So he let her run, and filed the case as an accident, and carried that secret until probably the end of his own life. David searched quickly. Howard Mills, Erie detective, found an obituary from 1997, deceased, at age 71, retired from police in 1985, survived by wife and 2 children, no mention of unsolved cases, no mention of Margaret Brennan. He took the secret to his grave, just like his grandmother tried to do. But there was still the most important piece, the diary, because the letters proved there was an investigation, that there was suspicion, that she ran. But they didn't prove what really happened that morning of March 14th, 1963, at the Erie Steel Works. And David was about to find out, in her own words. The condemned woman's diary. The notebook was small, black hardcover, worn at the edges, the kind of diary you buy at any stationery store for $2. Nothing special, nothing remarkable, except for what was written inside. David opened to the first page. Tight cursive handwriting, leaning to the right. Blue ink faded by time but still legible. Date at the top of the page, January 10th, 1963. Thomas came home drunk again. It was almost 2 in the morning. Woke up the neighborhood yelling because he couldn't open the door. He'd lost his key at the bar. When I let him in, he blamed me for locking the door, as if I was supposed to know he'd lose his key. He broke 2 plates, throwing them against the wall. Pushed me, called me names I won't write here. I'm tired, so tired of being afraid in my own home. I don't know how much longer I can take this. David turned the page. More entries, all telling the same story. Abuse, violence, fear. February 12th, 1963. He hit me today because dinner was cold. He got home 2 hours late and the food got cold. So he threw the plate on the floor and slapped me so hard my ear rang. Then he pushed me against the wall and said if I complained again, it would be worse. My eye is bruised. My lip is swollen. I told my sister I slipped on the stairs. She didn't. Believe me, but didn't push it. Nobody wants to get involved. Nobody wants to know. Sometimes I think about leaving, about taking my things and going. But where? I don't have my own money. I don't have a job. And he said, more than once, that if I try to leave, he'll find me and kill me. And I believe him. David stopped, breathed deeply. The sweet grandmother he knew, who made carrot cake and sang old songs while washing dishes, lived through this, lived with a man who threatened to kill her. He kept reading. More pages, more violence, more despair. February 28th, 1963. I thought about killing myself today. It would be easier than continuing to live like this. I took the sleeping pills the doctor gave me and stared at them for an hour. How many would be enough? 10, 20, all of them? But I couldn't, because if I die, he wins, and I can't let him win. David felt tears in his eyes. His grandmother considered suicide, got that close. And nobody knew. Nobody helped. March 8th, 1963, 6 days before Thomas's death. I met someone at church last Sunday, an older man, maybe 50 years old. He noticed the bruise on my arm that I couldn't completely hide. After Mass, he approached me in the parking lot, said he recognizes the signs, that his sister went through the same thing. He told me there are ways out, ways that nobody would suspect. Said he knows people who can help women like me, who can make it look natural. I don't know if I believe him. I don't know if this is real or if he's some kind of lunatic. But he gave me a phone number, said to call if I decide I can't take it anymore, that they can take care of it. I'm so scared, but I'm also so desperate that any way out seems better than staying. David's heart raced. She met someone who offered help to make it look natural. This wasn't about running away. This was about killing Thomas and making it look like an accident. March 10th, 1963. I called the number. A man answered, didn't say his name, asked me questions about Thomas, about his routine, about where he works, about the life insurance. Then he said, we can help, but it will cost. I asked how much. He said, $10,000, half now, half after, $10,000. I don't have it. But Thomas's life insurance is $100,000. If he dies, I'd have the money. The man said if I agree, it'll happen next Thursday. At the factory, during his shift. It'll look like an accident with the press. Nobody will suspect. I said, I need to think about it. But I've already decided. There's no other way out. David stopped breathing. She hired someone, paid to have Thomas killed. This wasn't self-defense in the heat of the moment. This was premeditated murder. March 12th, 1963. I got the money. Sold my mother's jewelry that she left me. Got $5,000. Borrowed the rest with the excuse that I want to remodel the kitchen. Delivered the money today. The man said it's done. Thursday, March 14th, between 9 and 10 in the morning. told me to go to the factory that morning, to sign the visitor log. So there's a record that I was there, but that I left before the accident. This gives me an alibi, but also explains if anyone saw me around. I'm terrified. My hands won't stop shaking, but there's no turning back. It's this or he kills me eventually. I know it's just a matter of time. March 13th, 1963, eve of the murder, tomorrow. It's happening tomorrow. Thomas will go to the factory like always. He doesn't suspect anything. He'll do his normal shift, and he won't come home. I rehearsed what I'll do. I'll go to the factory at 8:40, sign the log saying I came to bring him lunch. He forgot. Stay 10 minutes, leave, and wait for the call. God, forgive me. I don't know if there's forgiveness for what I'm about to do. But I also don't know if there's any other choice. If anyone ever reads this, understand. I'm not evil. I'm just a woman trying to survive. And then, the final entry. March 15th, 1963. One day after, it's over. Yesterday morning I went to the factory, signed the log, brought a lunch I prepared for him, like a wife would. He was in a bad mood as always, barely looked at me. I said I needed to go. Kissed him on the cheek. It was the last time. I left at 8:52, went back home, waited. At 10:20 the phone rang. It was the factory supervisor, saying there'd been an accident, that Thomas was dead, that I needed to go to the hospital to identify the body. I faked shock, faked despair. I cried, and the tears were real, but not for the reason they thought. I cried with relief. I cried because it's over, because I'm finally free, but I'm not, am I? Because now there's police asking questions. A detective, Howard Mills, is investigating. He suspects. I see it in his eyes. He knows something's wrong. People at the factory saw me. Someone must have told him. And now he wants to interview me. Wants to know why I was there. Wants to know about the insurance. I can't talk to him. I can't risk it. If he pushes, if he investigates deeply, he'll find out about the money I withdrew. He'll find the man I hired. He'll discover everything. I need to disappear. I need to become someone else. Margaret Brennan needs to die so I can live. I'll take the insurance money when it comes out. I'll go far away, Ohio maybe, or Indiana, somewhere nobody knows me. I'll get new documents, new name, new life, and I'll never talk about this again. I'll never look back. Margaret Brennan will disappear, and whoever I become, that person, will be good, will live right, will be the woman Margaret never had a chance to be. This is the last entry in this diary. Margaret Brennan ends here, and whoever I am tomorrow, that person starts clean. No past, no sins. Goodbye. David closed the diary, his hands shaking. Tears ran down his face without him noticing. His grandmother confessed, in her own handwriting, she planned it, hired someone, paid, and watched her husband die. And then she ran, erased her own identity, and lived 50 years hiding this secret. She wasn't a victim of circumstances. It wasn't self-defense. It was murder, premeditated, calculated, cold, and at the same time, it was the only way out she saw, the only way to escape from a man who was going to kill her eventually. In 1963, women had nowhere to run. There were no shelters, no protection, no easy divorce, no justice. So she made justice with her own hands. Or rather, paid someone to do it for her and lived with it every single day for 60 years. The final envelope. David was exhausted, emotionally and physically drained. It was almost 4 in the morning. He'd spent 6 hours reading, processing, trying to understand how the sweet woman who raised him was also a murderer. But there was still one thing left. The manila envelope at the bottom of the box. The envelope with the warning, if you're reading this, it's too late to hide the truth. Forgive me. He grabbed the envelope. Heavy, thick, sealed with several layers of yellowed tape. David used a knife to carefully open it. Inside there were more papers, and a letter, a long letter, written recently. The ink was still dark. The handwriting was shaky, the handwriting of someone elderly with arthritic hands, but legible. Date at the top, May 2nd, 2023, 2 weeks before his grandmother died. David started reading. To whoever finds this, my real name was Margaret Louise Brennan. I was born June 3rd, 1936, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I married Thomas James Brennan in 1957, and on March 14th, 1963, I killed him. Not directly, not with my own hands, but I hired someone to do it. I paid $10,000 for an accident to be arranged, and he died at the factory where he worked, crushed by an industrial press that malfunctioned. I won't apologize for what I did, because Thomas was killing me slowly, with his fists, with his words, with fear, and I knew that eventually he would finish the job, so I finished it first. But I will apologize for something else, for lying to all of you, to my daughter Sarah, to my husband Robert, who never knew he wasn't my first marriage, to my grandchildren, to everyone who knew me as Dorothy Cline. I built this life on a lie, on a fake identity, on forged documents and an invented past. And I lived in fear every day that someone would find out, but I also lived well. I was a good wife to Robert. I was a good mother to Sarah. I was a good grandmother. I worked honestly, paid taxes, even with a fake name, went to church, helped neighbors, did everything right. Everything except tell the truth. Why did I keep this for 60 years? Why didn't I destroy the evidence? Why did I keep the diary, the letters, the documents? Because part of me knew that the truth deserves to exist, even if I didn't have the courage to tell it while alive. Someone needs to know who Margaret Brennan was, what she suffered, and why she did what she did. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I'm asking for understanding. If you're Sarah, my daughter, you need to know something. You're not Robert's biological daughter. You're Thomas's daughter. I was 2 months pregnant when he died, and when I married Robert 2 years later, he believed you were his, and I let him believe it. You're the product of a violent marriage, but you're also the reason I stayed alive. If it weren't for you growing inside me, I would have given up, would have let Thomas kill me. But protecting you gave me strength to do the impossible. If you're one of my grandchildren, David or Emily, know that I loved you more than anything, and that the woman you knew was real. Dorothy Cline was real, because I created her. I became her, and I lived as her for so long that Margaret almost completely disappeared. But Margaret was still here, in the nightmares. In the nights I woke up sweating, dreaming about police knocking on the door. In the moments when I'd see a police officer on the street and my heart would race. She never left me, because you don't forget killing someone, even if it was necessary. I left instructions for this box not to be opened until 2065 because I wanted everyone who knew me to be dead before the truth came out. I didn't want Sarah to live knowing her mother was a murderer. I didn't want you, my grandchildren, to see your grandmother differently. But if you're reading this before 2065, and I imagine you are, because curiosity is stronger than obedience, then you decided that the truth was more important than my last wish. And maybe you're right. Maybe secrets shouldn't be buried for generations. Maybe the truth, however dark, deserves light. So here it is, all of it, no omissions. Margaret Brennan existed, suffered, killed, ran, and became Dorothy Cline. And Dorothy Cline lived a good life, not perfect, but good. Do what you want with this information. There's nobody left to prosecute. Everyone involved is dead. Howard Mills died in 1997. The man I hired, I never knew his real name, is probably dead too. Thomas has been dead for 60 years, and now I am too. Only words remain, and the truth, And maybe, just maybe, someone who reads this will understand that in 1963 a battered woman had no options. She only had impossible choices. I chose to survive. And I lived knowing that survival cost a life, and I carried that every day in silence, in secret, until now. Now you know. Forgive me if you can. Margaret Louise Brennan, Dorothy Ann Klein, May 2nd, 2023.